spoke about two groups of items. One is about behemoth tamea, which is about meat and poultry, and included in that, what we're going to come back to today, was fatty acids and glycerin. That was included last time. We're going to come back to it. Last time we talked about it if it's really treif. Today we're going to talk about a different angle of it. That also included about fish and bugs. And the second half of what we spoke about last time was about dairy products, which was about whole Yisrael and Venus Yisrael and soft cheese and whey and all kinds of things that have to do with those kinds of stuff. Okay. Today, we'll talk about different other things that could be treif. And again, the goal here, what we're trying to do here is just give an overview of all these things, like really just touch on these different things, because if there are, in essence, there are less treif things than kosher things, or classes of treif things. So if we identify all the treif things, or what can make something treif, then that sort of leaves everything else behind as being kosher, so to speak, which is a way of looking at things. Anyhow, okay, so we're going to go through. Okay, so the first is, the first group we're going to talk about are things that have to do with agricultural products. Okay, last time was animal products and dairy products, and now we're talking about agricultural products. Okay, so the first is machal yakum. Okay, Chazal were concerned that we would interact with goyim and they could lead to intermarriage. So they made they made three different isurim that go along with those, the three that go together, and they are things that goyim cook or bake. That's bishul akum and pas akum. That's two different isurim, each with their own twists of how they work. And they also made an issur of wine that a guy touched. We call stam yayin. If he was touched it or he poured it, that's what makes stam yayin. So bishul akum and pas akum are negeya in a house. If someone's cooking, it's a negay in a factory. If you make food, if you produce food, it's not usually some negay for a factory for ingredients. Usually ingredients don't come in with bishul or pasakum problems. That's not such a common thing. For consumers, of course, it does. For consumers, of course, hold on 1 second. It's mutter.
There are guys in it, but they
So say what you want to, like, Hold on a second. I'm just on my computer. I'm sorry. Okay, so Shemanach, nothing to do with me. Not my problem. They also asked Gibuli and 100 other things that are not negatas. We said last time we're not going to talk about things like Petachamar that we're not negatas. Anyhow, so for consumers, I'm sorry, for factories, ingredients coming to a factory of bishul and pasakum are not such an issue. But things to do with grape, there are loads of them. So we already spoke once about bishul akum, and we'll talk about it in the future, that bishul and pasakum at other times. But grape products, ingredients that come from grape or have questions of stam yayin are all over the place. Where was it? Just this week in tartaric acid is in sugar. Okay, you wouldn't know. Then that's a question of stam yayin. We hope it's mutter, but it's a question of stam yayin.
tartaric acid and sugar.
Good. See, look at that. So the.
Yes,
it was in this place. They're using tartaric acid.
Regular sugar.
No. It's as far as the balancing the pH of it when it's finishing. They use tartaric acid in this place. Okay, so you say
bottle, right?
Yes, it's bottle, and it's we hold this mutter, but yes, and there are people who don't hold this mutter. Yes, but so what I'm saying is that it's all over the place. We will one time do a thing just on grape products. There's all kinds of products that could come from grape all over the place that are, so to speak, ingredient type things. Okay. The next of the agricultural things is things to do with grains. Okay, and so one thing which either you think is very serious or you think is nothing at all is that American hashgachas, all the national hashgachas, just about, will give hashgacha to things that are, even if they contain what we call chadash, from the 5 grains: wheat, rye, spelt, oats, and barley. Because most Yidden in America are not makbid on that. They'll eat even if food is yashan. So if someone wants to be makbid, most people eat even chadash. So if a person wants to be makbid, or if a hashgacha wants to certify something as being yashan, so then there's all kinds of complications. Okay, all things that we have to do. One time, Mitch, we'll talk about that. What they have to do for doing that. Spelt and rye in the United States are always yashan. Just the way their planting season grows, they planted before Pesach and they're harvested after Pesach, so they're always yashan. But for the other ones, for wheat, barley, and which one time is oats. So then for a hashgacha, that's something to think about, or a private person to think about. They have to do. One time we'll talk about.
And a lot of rye is imported from Canada.
I don't know if it's any worse in Canada. Is that true? Okay, could be. It could be. You might be right. Okay. Okay. Now the next thing to do with grains is that if a Jewish person owns one of those 5 grains and he makes it into a dough, then there's mitzvah for challah. Okay, in order to be chayiv and challah, so yes, I mentioned already, it has to be someone Jewish. So I start with someone Jewish. It has to have a shir challah, which it's on. It's a shir challah. It has to be that the finished thing that you're going to make is going to have a bracha of zonis or hamotzi, and it'll also have a Torah lechem. Okay, so that means is to get all those things together. When we usually think about, you think of hafresh challah for bread, but of course it means for cakes and pizza and cookies and all those kind of things. Also, assume you have a shir challah. But it means you don't have to be mafresh challah for pasta or for oatmeal. Or this week, someone asked about they're making raw cookie dough to specifically put into. Well, actually, it was last week. Raw cookie dough specifically to put into ice cream. They're not selling it as raw cookie dough that someone's going to bake. Raw cookie dough is just going to go into ice cream, whose bracha is not a mizarnis or hamoitzi. So those kinds. So though you don't have to be mafresh challah, okay, because it doesn't have Torah lechem or it's not hamoitzi, or if it doesn't have a shir challah. Okay? I think I forgot.
So I was being done on that shaila.
Hey, wait, what bracha is it?
I forgot if it's shak or mizarnis. I forgot what the bracha was. It does. I don't remember. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I was being done on the shaila because I'm passing I want to be making passing something on Shabbos. Be making passing and buy these ice creams that have cookie dough in it. So I was just thinking, is this a shaila over here, pass over here? I decided it's not.
Right. Oh, good. Okay, we're on the same team then.
I was just thinking contacting whatever the OU, whatever, just make sure.
Got it. Okay.
Are you definitely sure? Are we definitely sure that it's...
No, that's what I thought. Everybody's thought the same thing also. Happens to be.
Find that if it's Yosh.
Yes, well, that depends on what you want to be marked on. You know, it depends which side of the table you sit on that one. You know,
so you said that it's not. It's dough. Since it's dough, it's not. Maybe it's not baked a little bit.
It's not chayv challah. I would have to think about whether the pastel part of it. But I think they go together usually. It's a din in shin chav test. I just looked it up this week.
So you decided it based on it because it's dough.
It says that if you make a thing and you're not going to bake it, with kavanah to never bake it, then it's not chayv challah.
But what was the content? What's the reference to?
Sure, exactly this kind of case.
Maybe it's a little baked.
Eat while doing all this?
I don't remember what it was for. I don't remember what was the case over there.
Maybe it's a little baked though. I'm just thinking that's what I'm thinking about.
You think maybe it's baked?
Maybe it's a drop baked or something.
Yeah, get rid of the hysteria.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so in talking about a shir challah, whatever you think is, let's pick a number. We'll say the shir challah is 5 pounds, whatever the number is. Pick a number. If in a factory, what I'm about to say is not something, but that's the Jewish ownership has to be that much. So if Yid owns the whole factory, so you need, yes, if the dough is 5 pounds, he owns a bakery, it has to be 5 pounds. If he's a partner, let's say he's a 10% partner, and the share is 5 pounds, then it has to be 50 pounds in the batch. With someone who's not Jewish, I'm sorry, someone partner with someone not Jewish, you have to have 50 pounds because the Yid's share has to be enough to be chayiv and challah. Okay, okay. When you have the piece that's challah, once you take off the piece, you do the actually hafresh challah. You have to burn the piece. Until then, it has the din of truma tmeya. And before your mafresh has din of tevel, both of those, truma tmeya and tevel, both of them you have to kasher if it was put on equipment that was not done properly. If you use the truma or use the tevel, both of them, if you put them on kalim, you have to kasher those kalim.
The whole dough or the part was so fresh?
If you separate a challah, or if you were never mafresh and you have tevel, either one of those, you have to kasher because of that.
Strictly speaking, in the chutzlaretz, it might be like a chepsa d'isur, right? It's just a mitzvah on the.
Yeah, you can take it later.
So you can go listen to that share about that. You have to be mafresh. I didn't say you can't. If you're mafresh eventually, you're fine. You could be mafresh after. But like for example, if you remember this 2 years later, then it's too late to do.
Kasher the kalim.
You have to kasher. Yes.
That's what you're passing.
Yes, I'll point you to the right page in the book if you want. Okay, okay, I should say that's how I remember it. Okay, we'll look it up afterwards. Okay, when I wrote this, that's what I thought. Okay, we will one day talk about how we do it commercially. Okay, commercially, that's not such a simple thing. That's its own special parsha how we do that. Okay, and this reason, this idea that you have to be mafresh challah from if a Yid owns his company is one of the 2 reasons why we track which company is owned by Yidden. One is for this, and one is for Pesach. Okay, we have to track if a Jewish-owned company. If they're making potato chips, we don't care. But if they're making something that would be chayiv and challah, then we would care for this reason and for Hilchos Pesach that they shouldn't become a trouble on Pesach. Okay, just to, you shouldn't forget, we're talking agricultural things. So bugs we talked about last time. That's very relevant to agricultural things. But okay, next, the next group of things are things that have to do with time and place. So one I just mentioned to you. I didn't say any. Let's come time and place. Let's do the top place. I'm trying to think where I said that. Okay, anyway, it's coming. Okay, so the first like this. The first is a time and place has to do with Pesach. Okay, that for come Pesach, there's all kinds of extra rules of what makes food kosher. Okay, that you can't have chametz or kidneys. Okay, you can't eat it and you can't own it, of course, and have hana from it. So wheat and soy and corn and rice, all those things are very popular all over the place. They're using food chemicals like ethanol, think about like that, vinegar, making fermentations, emulsifiers. So they're all over the place. They're so rampant in what we have that they give hashgacha for something for Pesach. Just about everything needs to be special hashgacha, not everything, but just about everything. And because it's so complicated, the general rule is that we only give hashgacha for Pesach or hashgacha tmidas. Okay, not everything. There are some exceptions to that. There's some things that are always kosher Pesach, like a company I went to this week that's kosher Pesach all year round, not under our certification, which was not kosher Pesach when I was there. But
What were they making?
I'm not gonna say, but I'll tell you after.
It was only around, but was not kosher.
Right. No, it was so simple that it was going to be kosher Pesach that they certified without a mashgiach tmidi. Usually Pesach stuff is kosher Pesach, always hashgacha mashgiach tmidi. Here they let it without it, and in fact it was not. But then, yeah, that was like a weird exception. But usually things of Pesach are hashgacha tmidi is because of all these complications.
It wasn't a matzah company, right?
It was not a matzah company. No. Mitchell next week under a matzah company. But if I get in, okay. Okay. Another thing is about Pesach is that not only you're not allowed to eat it, but if a yid owned it over Pesach, it's chametz over Pesach. Okay, so for people who own a house in your house, you have to care about that, of course. If you own a store, you have to care about that. Or you have to get rid of your chametz to do mechiras chametz before Pesach. So you shouldn't be over on Bal Yirah. If you're over, not just for your personal isser, yes, of course, you don't want over the isser, but also the food's going to be us afterwards. Okay, so two things have come up with that in recent years have to do with this shaila. And one is the one that was like sort of more personal to the CRC is that we came across this whiskey manufacturer who's a Jewish person. He owned this huge whiskey company, and it's the whiskeys that he makes are made with chametz, and they're made with chametz and they're aged for many years. So automatically he owned every one of them from over Pesach. Okay, with other things, if he made cookies, we wouldn't be so worried. It would just be a certain amount of time after Pesach. Here it's whiskey, so it's that was a more serious shaila. It wasn't so relevant to the vodka and gins because those are tend to be not made from chametz and they're not aged. But for the whiskeys, that was a whole to-do, as you may well remember. That's one thing. The second thing is that most food manufacturing companies, the people who actually make the company, aside from this case, by and large, are not Jewish owned. You don't have to worry about chametz over Pesach. And in stores, people are sensitive. They know the store that they shop in. If it's owned by a yid, they have to make sure that they sell the chametz. Okay, but what's come to light is this idea that there are distributors who are Jewish and they distribute a lot of chametz, a lot of everything. Okay, so now it turns out like this: when the distributor is Jewish, so the question is when I pick up a box of pretzels, a bag of pretzels after Pesach, am I getting something that the distributor owned on Pesach or not? Okay, so to try to explain to you, I see 5 variations for how that could happen. Okay, for what could happen, what the shaila is. Okay, we have to figure out who owns this chametz. The story we're talking about here is the manufacturer is not Jewish and the store owner is not Jewish, and the only person who's Jewish is the distributor. Okay, that's the question we're dealing with. So I'm going to give you 5 cases of who owned the chametz when. Okay, so in this case, the chametz is the simplest case. The chametz is in the store already before Pesach. Before Pesach, the store already had it. So he had it before Pesach and on Pesach and after Pesach, but it's not owned by someone Jewish. Okay, so the din is that it's fine. It's mutter, no problem. It was owned by someone who's not Jewish, no Pesach. What? That's the easiest case. Okay, that's the first case. Okay, we'll move along. And the next case is it was owned by the distributor before Pesach, and he sold it to the store on Pesach. Okay, so in this case, okay, he owned it before Pesach, and he sold it. Means is that come the third day of Pesach, he sold it to the store. So in this case, even if the distributor did a mechiras chametz by selling the chametz on Pesach, he was over on Bal Yirah by doing that. He retook possession of it. He for sure was over on it. So in that case, it's going to be also okay. When he distributed on Pesach, even had he done a mechiras chametz before Pesach, in the middle of Chol Hamoed, he went and sold it to a store. So and the store is not Jewish. Why are you making faces?
I don't know. That's true.
Because
He sold it, so it's not his. So he sold something which is not his. He was ever his.
okay, so Ramosh in the famous Tshuva who talks about the owns it, he says, but if he sells it on Pesach, then it's usher. Ramosh says, now the case Ramosh is talking about, the Warbaum's case, is it's a supermarket. So if he sold it on chametz, the person who bought it didn't care about chametz and Pesach. That person didn't care. Ramosh says that does not negate to us. But of course, he says it would be usher. But that's because he was talking about a supermarket. So the person who buys cookies on Pesach doesn't care about chametz. So we don't care about that person. It's not relevant to Shiloh.
He sold something which was not his.
So Ramosh says no, but the act of selling it is a stealing back from the guy. He's stealing it back from the guy. So because he first of all he took repossession of it, and because he's chayav b'chrayas, Ramosh says he's for sure this is usher at that point. Okay, That's a second case. Okay, you can think mull that one over. Now the third case is the distributor. The distributor. I don't know what's happened to this case. I see something wrong here, but anyhow, okay. The distributor had it before Pesach and he kept it on Pesach. Okay, he kept it and he gave it. He sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay,
again, it was sold over Pesach.
So the distributor.
It sold to the guy over Pesach.
So now, why?
After Pesach.
No, he sold it. He wants it if they had a Kashrus chametz. So now it's going to depend. Okay, this case is a depend case. Okay, the distributor sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay, so now what this
going back to case B, there was a Kashrus chametz or not?
Yes, there was. So even if there, I said even in case even if there was a Kashrus chametz, since on Pesach he sold it. Remember, says in that case it's usher because this act of selling it makes it usher. Okay, case C is he sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay, so the distributor had it from before Pesach and he kept it through Pesach, and then he sold it to the store after Pesach. So here there's two parts to think about. One is did he have Kashrus chametz? Okay, if he had a Kashrus chametz, that would be one thing. So Kashrus chametz would be, if he didn't have Kashrus chametz, it would be of course no good. Second, if he had Kashrus chametz, then there's the question is, does that help? He ran his business like usual. So Moshe says it's okay. Other people were not so thrilled about that. So that's a question. In that case C, should it be mutter or should it be usher in that case? Okay.
I didn't follow. What's the shayla?
The distributor is Jewish.
Okay.
He owned chametz on Pesach.
But I thought you said he sold it.
He had Kashrus chametz. So first of all, he had to have Kashrus chametz. Not every distributor has Kashrus chametz. Okay. The second thing is, not everyone agrees with what Moshe said. That if a guy has Kashrus chametz and then he runs his business like regular, does that invalidate the mechira? Does it show
even the stuff he didn't sell?
Even the stuff he didn't sell, that's good.
If he had a proper Kashrus chametz, then it's fine.
No, I'm okay. Maybe I wasn't being clear. He had Kashrus chametz and his business ran like usual. He was buying and selling. Everything was running like everything.
He sold the company to a guy.
Yeah,
had to manage it, so that's for sure fine.
So he has a good type of material.
If he does a really, so it depends. Not everybody's even about that stuff, but it depends. So there's a lot of variables over here. That's why it's great. It's a lot of variables.
Correctly.
Then maybe that should be okay. Yes, okay. Yes, that's great. So it's a fuzzy case. It depends on a lot of variables over here and positions. Okay, case number D. Okay, the manufacturer had the distributor didn't get it till Pesach. Okay, it was they got a delivery of Cheerios on Pesach. So General Mills owned it before Pesach, and on Pesach the distributor finally got it. So in that case, it's similar to case B, where it's even better than case B, where it's usher because here it's not even covered by the mechira. Even if he had a mechira's chametz, he got it on Pesach. It's not covered by the mechira. You can't sell it if you didn't own it yet.
You paid for it before Pesach.
So that's a fuzzy. That case is a fuzzier case. Ramosha would have said for sure it's not okay. Again, for the other cheshbon here,
it's clear that it's not going to work. I mean, the starters say it's stuff that I'm getting.
So there are those who say that it's hard to understand. How do you sell something that you didn't buy it? It's a question. It's hard to understand how that could work. There are people who think like that. I thought this is more traditional. Again, Ramosha who says if you sell it on Pesach, for sure would say in this case, the act is in itself taking.
So how does it work? I'm getting somebody orders something, right, and it comes on Pesach.
Then what?
Well,
then what's your question?
So I'm somehow I'm not over it.
If a box of Cheerios shows up,
yeah,
who would say that? You don't feel like you want to be over, but that doesn't mean that's the truth.
So what do you do? What do I do? What do people do?
You don't order Cheerios to show up on Pesach. What can I tell you?
No, and
or you don't. Yeah, or you're not going to when it shows up at your door.
Okay, so if a guy did a mechira,
he doesn't care anything. He's running his business. He doesn't care about pay. He's sorry.
He wants to do the mechira.
Yes, of course.
Wants to the work.
If the distributor was
he
closed his store for Pesach,
as much effort as he put into mechira, he wants the benefit of the mechira that stuff shouldn't come also, right? So
you mean when it shows up and the guy comes out with a forklift and takes the pallets off and there's that he's like, no, I'm not being crazy. It's not mine.
Obviously not.
He did a proper mechira. It's owned by a guy.
Now, I don't know. Maybe the reason why was because bittul. Maybe it's the bittul you need to. Then I hear it. This guy didn't do bittul. He just did mechira, and maybe.
Okay. Last case is if the manufacturer had it from before Pesach and he had it on Pesach and he didn't sell it to the distributor till after Pesach. Excuse me. So then in this case it's mutter because it wasn't by Yid until after Pesach. Okay, so
gotta be more cases, more variables.
Okay, in my imagination, these are the case I came up with. You can come up with more. Originally, I only had 4. Then I came up with a 5th. There's maybe a 6th afterwards. I'm okay with that. But so I'm showing you this first. I'll just go through the cases, but it's really more than that. And really, it is like this. That means that when I walk into the store and I know the distributor was Jewish, there's a very big shiloh. What is the box that I'm holding? I'm holding this box of Cheerios now in my hand. Which was this case A, B, C, D, or E? Which case was it this box that I'm holding? I have no way of figuring out who owned it at which point. Okay, so that in itself is a layer of suffix to this thing, which is also a drabanan. Okay, so some Rabbanim says it's a suffix drabanan. There's no way you could figure out whether the Cheerios are mutter also. Because look, there's some green boxes and some orange boxes in there, and there's gray boxes. There's everything in there. So the box that I have, I can't figure out which one it was.
You don't know the distributor Jewish either.
No, I'm saying, let's say we know the distributor Jews. So we find out that I live in this place. No, there are people who
there's 10,000 products in this
That's
thing.
in Baltimore, everyone knows it's
there are
distributed.
people who know in this neighborhood, this city, this is who distributes.
Oh, yeah.
So I know I got it, or I know that the beer distributor in New York before he got his Yerushalmi kugel, before he got his whatever, so his babka, a babka, forgot his babka. Everybody knew that he distributed the beer, but who owned that beer over Pesach? So look at all these choices. There's all different variations, and you're going to come up with more of them. So that itself is a layer of suffix that maybe you say something wrong. There were those who thought like that. Others thought not like that. Okay, that's it. It's on.
Well, why not?
I'm not really sure. Okay, so now, next.
This is the one case, where we don't have a choice, where is, all the products prominently displayed, the nice texture on the thing.
And might be kosher.
Yeah, there's no way to control it. There's no way to.
Yes,
there's
that's
no
true.
way to do anything about it.
That's a good point.
I'm sure there's people out there that, hummus is a big thing about hummus and everything, so everybody knows, but people know.
Yeah.
So people say, what do you mean, an extra? I bought an extra. What's the
Yes.
what are you talking about?
3 out of 5 scenarios are awesome.
2 were okay, 2 were not okay. One was
C,
yeah.
Again,
Depends.
We don't do
Depends.
we don't do meat by a chart and bars.
Oh, that's not true.
Scenario, not the scenario.
Okay. Next, another thing has to do with we're in the time and place. If I pull you back into who we were. Okay, that there's a din of arla for the first 3 years that a fruit grows only from a fruit tree, not from vegetables. For the first 3 years, the fruit is usher as arla. It's only for fruits, and it applies to chutz la'aretz, but special halacha l'mashri Sinai that sabbath arla b'chutz la'aretz is mutter. So for us, we come out never think about arla because as soon even there's any fruit out in the market that are mutter, even any suffix that's enough to make it mutter. So it's come out like it has almost nothing to do with us, except if you own a tree in your backyard. Almost we never have a shiloh of arla because there's always going to be a suffix arla. Is this apple arla or is it not arla? So no, it's partial because it's a suffix. Suffix arla and chutz la'aretz is mutter. Okay.
We certified 2 stores there. How do we take care of our own?
So for chutz la'aretz,
No, for imported tap oranges.
I'm coming one second. I can get there to you. So if I say just for chutz la'aretz, so for chutz la'aretz stuff, we come out and not negate us. Okay, what negate to us is from stuff from Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Suffolk arla is like any other isser. Okay, which is negate to citrus fruits is a common thing that they export. That's a fruit that would be a shiloh of arla. So now there's a shiloh. How much percentage of a fruit has to be arla in order for it to be usher in Eretz Yisrael? Okay, we spoke about this in Chus Teloim. Okay,
It's a suffix.
to make if it's a suffix, at what percentage? Let's say if 14% of the oranges are arla in the market, is that mutter rasa? Am I allowed to eat them or not allowed to eat them? Okay,
You know for sure it's Arla, of course.
and if you know if it's a suffix arla,
Pick up an orange, you know no idea if it's Arla or not.
and you know that in the
Only 14%.
market 14% are, says that mutter rasa. Am I allowed to eat it? Okay, there's 3 big sheets. Some say it has to be more than 50%. Some people say it has to be 10%, like me and Hamotzi, that the number comes from. Some people say 5%. Okay, we spoke about this in Hilchos Teloim. What the all different sheet is about how much percentage it has to be.
It's 5% come from?
5%. It's a good question. We spoke about it then.
That's
It's a
a good
good,
sheet to meet. What's it?
it's a good question. No, that's a good question. We talk about it then. And so what happens like this in Eretz Yisrael, there are groups who make charts of all the percentages of arla for each fruit. Okay, they say this season, the oranges are this and the apples are this, and all the percentage broken down by all kinds of fruits. And then whatever sheet you like, you fit into your chart. Okay, you fit into your chart. So when someone calls up the office and says,
that percentage is what's on the market or
Yeah, in the market.
Grown.
but how much of the same thing? How much?
They destroy them. Up the Allah, they just destroy them.
Oh, I guess they ignored those fruit. I'm guessing, but that's a good question. So, like for example, someone will call up and say, "Hi, I just bought persimmons from Eretz Yisrael. Can I eat them? Can I not eat them?" We look at the chart and says, "Okay, this year persimmons are X%, and is that good or is it not good?" Then we answer based on that. Okay, and you said for our stores the same thing. There are stores where we give hashgacha to make sure the trumas and rice is taken from Eretz Yisrael stuff. The same thing for fruits. So if we bang into, I don't know, oranges from Eretz Yisrael, we do the same thing. We say, look, these oranges, are they mutter or usher based on those percentages? Okay.
It's such a chart that somebody does it, somebody tracks this.
Yeah, in Eretz Yisrael, the groups that put these things together, the charts of all the fruits in Eretz Yisrael, I guess, whatever the fruits that they sell, and what percentage of each one is Arla, and then you pick your sheet and you put it into the thing and decide which ones you want to eat or not.
Where you get this chart?
I have it from, I get it every year or 2 years. I don't know, get it every
You
year.
might be eating early.
What did you say?
Ultimately, you might be eating early.
So what? And there was the milk that he drank might have been from a treifa also. But there's a din when you're allowed to eat doing early. I don't know if you had was that a coffee or tea? So it has milk in it also. So the milk might have been from a treifa, but there's a din. Sometimes you're allowed to eat, sometimes you're not allowed to eat it. Okay, so it is what it is. You know?
So they work the entire non-certified plain fruit market. What the percentages are that it's Arla.
Correct.
Right. I would imagine within the first 3 years, not so many fruits, not so many trees give fruit. I mean, they obviously take that into.
That's
something the count starts over.
Right, because if they replant things. So
Yeah,
you should I'll just throw that in for that part is that you should know when they started paying attention to this, in Eretz Yisrael started paying attention to it, they then kept track. I forgot the number. The number might have been 900,000, but I might be with some crazy large number of fruit trees that were replanted under hashgacha to make sure they didn't have to restart their early years. Because there's sensitivity to make sure things don't become arla. Because of that, they hundreds of thousands. I've got the number 700,000, 900,000 of trees that were replanted. I'll be in to make it that they don't have to recount the years. Anyway, fine.
Okay. I wonder why I had to use a fruit tree. Parents asked me, which was replanted.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how do you know what the shear is? The shear is enough to live. You have enough dirt to live. You don't have to recount. How did they find that out?
So I'll point you to a marble. I just was writing something about it. I'll point you to if you remind me afterwards. Okay.
With how long?
Okay. Okay. I'm going to point you. Okay. Next. We have to finish. So we have a nice to go. So, okay. Trumas Maishus, another thing has to do with time and place, what you asked about before. Okay. Something that grows in Eretz Yisrael needs to be mafresh Trumas Maishus. Until then, the fruit, the stuff is tevel. If you run it on kalim, you have to cash those kalim. Okay, we actually had that. Okay, it's like whoever thinks about that here in America. One of the things that they export from Eretz Yisrael, it seems they're a big exporter of, is watermelon seeds. Okay, go figure. And we had a company asked for hashgacha on their watermelon seeds coming from Eretz Yisrael. So going forward, they were going to get them already had hafresh trumas and meiser. They were going to get it. It was going to be fine. It wasn't going to be a problem. But the stuff they had used previously did not have that, had not had trumas meiser taken from it, and it was too late to be mafresh because it was gone. It had been years of it gone. It couldn't be mafresh anymore at that point. So we kashed kalim. That's what we did actually. So in order to mafresh, to do hafrasha, you have to take off about 20%. The hafrasha is on about 20%, which is you take a tiny bit for truma, then you take off then you take 10% for meiser, then 10% of that 10% is trumas meiser. So far you took off 10% in a drop, and then you take off another 10% either in some years for meiser sheni, that's years 1, 2, 4, and 5 of shemitah's meiser sheni, and in years 3 and 6 of shemitah you take off meiser ani, another 10%. So in the end you've taken off give or take 20% of the stuff has been separated. Okay, but all of that is mutter for people to eat, except for the truma, which is the tiny bit you took at the beginning, and the 10% of 10%, which is another 1%. That's also those are truma, which is it's tame you can't eat it, and the kohanim tame you can't eat it. So that one little more than 1% ends up being not usable. So you have to discard it or get rid of it. Again, if you put that on your kalim, you have to cash the kalim for that also. And then the rest is okay. Okay, so this is negate to all kinds of things that come from Eretz Yisrael. Carrots, peppers, as you know, going on now, citrus fruits, and then there's things like lemon oil. Okay, lemon oil comes from Eretz Yisrael. That's also chayim trumas. Okay. Last in this section is our favorite for this year, is because of Shemitah. Okay, that things that grow during the Shemitah year, like this year, have special din to them. We don't. The American hashgachas and the Mahadran Israeli ones don't accept the het mechira. So the two big issues that we have to deal with here in America are svichen, which is vegetables, things that replanted every year, vegetables and herbs and things like that. They're usher if they're shemitah produce, and kedusha shvius, which is things that grow during shemitah. Have kedusha shvius. You have to treat them properly. Okay, and punkt we have a mix of those actually going on right now. The peppers right now, they have kedusha shvius and they're shiloh svichen. They're not svichen, but they're a shiloh. Okay, one day we'll talk about those also. Okay, last thing we have to talk about is kalim. Okay, so we talked about a bunch of different ways that things can be treif, and all the things we talked about now, I tried to talk about with things that were inherently treif. Like if something was shmita, svichen, so svichen is usher. The svichen is usher, and now the last thing we have to talk about is kalim. Okay, and that is all the things that we talked about are the thing itself is treif. But there's also a whole din of tam kicker that makes it that all kinds of things become treif because they were on the same kalim as those things that were treif. Okay, so for example, you remember, I'm sure you remember from last time this chart of fatty acids. Okay, I'm sure you memorized all those little numbers on there, and this is different oils and fats, and which fatty acids they have in them. Okay, if I can remind you, an oil or a fat is comprised of two parts: is glycerin, and glycerin is attached to 3 fatty acids. And the glycerin is exactly the same for all oils and fats, but depending on the fatty acids, the mix of fatty acids that are there that dictates the properties of corn oil. Why corn oil is different than lard, why it has different properties, a different boiling point, and all kinds of things. It has to do with the different mix of fatty acids that it has. Okay, so the fatty acids are considered the more valuable part of these than the glycerin part. Okay, so in order to get a fatty acid, so let's take lauric acid. Okay, so you want to get lauric acid. So if you look on the chart, you see that a really good place to get lauric acid from is from coconut oil. Okay, coconut oil is almost half of the fatty acids in coconut oil are lauric acid. Okay, it's 47%. It's a great place to get lauric acid from.
How else would we get it?
What?
How else would we get it? Nothing else has it.
Nothing else on this chart has it, right? So it's in minor pieces on some other things, and there may be another oil that I'm not thinking of. Okay, but for us, that's a really common place to get it from is coconut oil. Like you see yourself, you looked at the chart, you said, obviously you get it from coconut oil. Okay, so lauric acid should be kosher. It comes from coconut oil. Okay, the problem is, so be'etzim, it's kosher because coconuts are kosher. So coconut oil will be kosher, and the lauric acid should always be kosher. But in fact, we say it needs hashgacha because to get the lauric acid out of the coconut oil, you have to do 2 big steps to get it out. Okay, the first is it's called a splitter. You have to split the glycerin from the fatty acids. I told you the oil is glycerin with fatty acids. How do you do that? You put it into this huge machine. I mean, huge, like 100 feet tall. You put it in this machine that splits it at very high temp, like 800 degrees Fahrenheit, under tremendous amount of pressure, and it splits the glycerin from the fatty acids. Okay, that's the first thing you have to do is you have to split the glycerin from the fatty acids. Then once you've split them, now you have this mix of fatty acids. Okay, you have this mix of fatty acids, and those fatty acids have to then be distilled. You have to put them through a still so that the lauric acid goes this way, and the caprylic acid goes this way, and the palmitic acid goes that way. You have to divide. You have this now soup of fatty acids, and you have to divide them so that you get only lauric acid as your thing. You have to. So there's a little difference in boiling point between lauric acid and palmitic acid. So by distilling it, you get just one what's called fraction out, and leave the other fraction go a different way. Okay, so you have this mix of fatty acids, and you divide them into the ones you want to. Now those two processes I just described, the splitting and the distillation, both are hot, and both could also be used for animal fat. Okay, the same kalim that do that job, in fact, and they are. Coconut oil has a lot of properties and similar to other animal fats. So the same kalim would be used to split animal fat and then to distill the same thing. In animal fat, you're not trying to get lauric acid. You're trying to get, I don't know, stearic acid out. So you're trying to separate their soup of fatty acids and get out those fractions. So first you have to split it. For all of them, you have to split it, and then you have to distill them. So mamela, you're going to use the same kalim. So that's why lauric acid is considered that it needs hashgacha, not because we think it comes from animals. It's really unlikely it comes from animal products. But the reason is because of the kalim that's made of. Okay. So like, for example, in laundry grade, on the set aside, things that are non-food use, lauric acid is no problem because we know it doesn't come from animals. Okay. It's assumed that it doesn't come from animals. Okay. So now, so here's the rule of the short version of the rule of how you break down fatty acids. Okay, fatty acids we would break them down into these 3 groups. There's the short chain fatty acids. Okay, let's start the opposite end on the right end. The long chain fatty acids that have 14, 16, or 18, palmitic and stearic and myristic. What? C is how many carbons there are. Because the chain, it's a chain of 14 carbons to 12. The amount of carbons, that's what. Okay, so the long chain ones could come from vegetable oil or animal fat. Those are the most serious. Okay, those could actually be inherently treif, the ones in the long chain fatty acids. The medium chain, like you ever see like MCT oil, like medium chain triglycerides, that's what this is. Okay, the medium chains, okay, which is 6, 8, 10, or 12, caprylic, capric, or lauric. Excuse me, those are the medium chains. Those commonly come from coconut oil or some other vegetable oils. And those are assumed to come from a kosher source, but they need hashgacha because the kalim that they're made on, that those processes I just described to you can be done with animal product as well. And then the short chain, the acetic and the butyric, the C2s and C4s, those don't come from these things, but they're cloud. They come from other processes that don't have such shilas them, and those are going to be okay wherever they come from. Okay, they can come from animal product, but almost never. So those are okay no matter what. Okay. Yeah.
Wait,
What do you say? Well, acetic acid in this case, we're not talking about acetic acid like TG. I'm talking about in a product, ethyl acetate. So the acetic version of that is assumed to come from this stuff. It's not the acetic acid like as in if someone's using just plain acetic acid. Okay. Anyhow. Okay. Now another a variation of what I just told you. Okay. When you make corn oil, okay, corn oil. We'll not add corn oil for fatty acids. Corn oil, just corn oil as it is. Okay. So corn oil comes from corn. Okay. So what could be wrong with corn oil? Okay. Corn oil is corn. It's fine. What could be wrong with that? So inherently it's kosher. The problem is that oils have an odor to them. It's actually in Shulchan Aruch about that they have an odor to them. And before they send it to your house for you to cook with it, they deodorize it. They remove odor. They deodorize it. They take out the odor. Okay. The deodorizing is a type of still, not the same one I described before, but it's a type of a still. What you're doing basically is you're boiling out those fragrances, the parts that you don't like, and you're distilling them out and leaving behind the oil that you do like. Okay, so the deodorizer that you use for corn oil can also be used to deodorize animal fat also. Okay, so the shaila of the reason why vegetable oils and vegetable and seed oils need hashgacha is because of the concern that maybe it was deodorized on calories. Seed oils like I think actually corn may be a seed oil, whatever. These kind of things is because the chashash is that deodorizing might be happening on kalim that we use for non-kosher. Okay, when I say these kind of oil, that's different than essential oil. Okay? Essential oils are you steam to get the essential part of like a herb. Okay, like mint essential oil is you put mint through steam to get the flavorful part out of the mint into an oil rather than having to have the actual leaves. Okay, those are fine. Those don't need to go.
So you're saying the process is different. Corn is crushed, squeezed, as opposed to
corn. Well,
steam.
No, the process is not what I'm focusing on. When you make corn, however you get the oil out of it, sometimes it with a solvent, sometimes by crushing. That's not the sensitive part.
Okay.
The problem is once I have the corn oil, I have a container of corn oil, I now have to deodorize it to make it taste better.
But I don't do that. Don't need to be
right. They're not deodorized. No, they are actually the odor there is what you want. The fragrance of the mint oil is what you want.
So what defines? So what's the definition of an essential oil?
An essential oil is when you find something flavorful like rosemary, and you don't want to use the actual rosemary. You want the flavor from that. You want the flavor from that. So it's an essential oil. There's a process to get the flavor out of the rosemary, so you can have rosemary oil. Okay.
Opposed to corn oil.
This is a corn oil. You want the oil, not the flavorful part of it, so to speak. So
why is it given the name essential?
It's like it's
you want the ganze Zach?
It's the ikr. This is the main part of the rosemary. Rosemary is not so pretty, it's nice little leaves. The main part is the oil that's in there. That's the flavor of it, as opposed to the leaf. You don't want the leaf.
The oil is what has the goods.
Is what you want. And the oil in the corn also, but it's a seed oil. Like this, I don't know. This is a seed oil. This is like a vegetable oil, and this is an herb. I don't know. Okay.
Well, soybean oil. No one wants soybeans. They just want the oil.
Well, some people want soybeans, but it's a different thing. Okay. Next, another thing is there are times that you have something and you want to get the liquid out of it. You want to dry it out in order to get the liquid out of it. Okay. So those dryers. As you know, those dryers are things that could be used for kosher and treif also. So an example, just to bring out the case for right over here is if you had dried hibiscus, okay, like vitamin C, dried hibiscus is made on a really simple dry that it's only used for herbs and vegetable things. So we don't have to worry about those kalim. But if you wanted hibiscus PE, hibiscus powdered extract, that is a liquefied version of hibiscus that was then dried. So there we have a chashash of kalim. If anything that's dried, as you know, something that's spray dried or drum dried, things like that, we worry about what else was dried on those kalim because they can be used for anything. Okay. Okay. Two more things. One is if you have a food that needs to be heated, either to make it edible or to make it not spoil. So then we usually are concerned. I'm trying to finish up. Almost two more things. Then we try to finish up. Then we need to heat it in order to either make it edible or to make it not spoil. And that again can be used for kosher and for treif. So if I make ketchup and the ketchup has only kosher ingredients, so it's kosher. It's inherently kosher. Nothing. Look at the ingredients; they're all kosher. But you have to cook ketchup in order to make it. So we're concerned that kettle was used for something else that was not kosher. Okay, or if you have canned corn, what's in this? Corn and salt and water. What there's nothing treif inherently. There's nothing treif about it, but it's processed on a retort that cooks it. So mamela, what else was put on it? Maybe the thing before it was pork and beans. Okay, so that mamela it needs hashgacha. Okay, and so that's only when we concern that the retort be used for both. I'll throw in. I'm going to confuse you. That canned fruit is not like that. Okay, and bulk pasteurization, we also don't worry so much about it. Okay, too fast, I said that. Okay, next. Last is we are concerned that tam not only goes into a kli, but goes through the walls of a kli into the steam system. So when we give hashgacha, we think about not only was the kettle used to cook ketchup, and maybe beforehand it was used for something else, but maybe the next kettle over was used for something treif, and it affected the steam system. Okay, so here there's an interesting twist to that, which is that even though we care about that and we pay attention to that when we give hashgacha, when we think about things of group one, we don't pay attention to that. We ignore that. That's a good question. Why? But that's pretty accepted. That the fact that maybe in that same plant they were doing something else in their steam system on the same kalim. Yeah. Okay. So that they're doing something on the same kalim that they do think about. Should we let this be group one when we're in the same kalim? Should it be group one? The fact that maybe the steam system is being used else, that's sort of people.
Of course, if we know what certified, you can say, well,
I said, you don't give hashgacha. No, well, we say just ship it to the next company, the next place, then it'll be okay. Yeah. Okay. So just to wrap up what I was just trying to, my point here is that the inherent things that are inherently treif, there's a very limited scope of them. Okay, we try to map out all the ones we could think of, all the limited scope of things that are actually inherently treif. But this last group, which is things that are made on treif kalim, in my mind, affects many more things than the things that are inherently treif. We don't run into things that are actually treif. Even I listed, 18 of them. I came up with 18 things that could be wrong with something that can make a treif. That's harder to bang into. We don't bang into that so often. But to run into things that are treif because of kalim is a more serious issue. Now, in fact, on a commercial level, kalim is not such a serious concern. The evidence is usually not such a concern. But in practice, we are chayshish. Think about that, something made on treif kalim. So I have a feeling that covers more items. There are more items that are affected, that are need hashgacha because of that, than things that are because they're inherently treif. Okay. Sorry that went over time.
Okay, those buildings.